I had heard about Madonna. And Madonna was doing this thing called Ashtanga Yoga.
Welcome to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Reika and I am your host. Thank you for tuning in today. I am recording this intro from Tulum, Mexico, and I just finished assisting a week-long retreat / 200-hour teacher training program. It's the same program that I've been assisting up in Oakland, California. This was final 1 week of the training that happened in Tulum, Mexico as a retreat / week-long every single day training. It's been such a pleasure assisting this program. I learned so much. I became a much better teacher and hopefully better human from being part of it. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to be able to assist my teacher, Annie Carpenter, for her Smart Flow 200-hour teacher training program. She says that this was her last 200 hours that she will teach. Who knows, she might teach again in the future, but for now, it seems like this was the last one. So I'm very, very lucky and grateful and honored to be able to assist this program. It's been so great. So right now my heart is full. My cup is full with just so much gratitude, as well as full of inspiration to continue teaching this method as I go back to Long Beach. At the very end of the teacher training, myself and other assistants got to collaborate and teach a class together for our final class, and that was really fun to collaborate with other Smart Flow teachers, come up with our own sequence, teach it to all the students as well as our teachers. And I was a little bit nervous, but everything went well, and it was great. I feel very full of warmth and gratitude, and also I feel complete with one of the chapter that I've been part of for last few months. So it feels good to have completed that. Today, I have an exciting conversation to share with you. This is a conversation I had with Aimee Echo. And Aimee Echo is my teacher. She is the only authorized Ashtanga teacher in Long Beach. And I started to practice Ashtanga with her back in 2018, I believe. And I had a daily, consistent Mysore style practice, Ashtanga practice with Aimee for about a year and a half, I believe. And the pandemic happened and my practice started to shift. But still, even though I don't go to her Mysore practice on a daily basis anymore, I still consider Aimee my teacher. And Aimee is probably she is the teacher in Long Beach that I have the most respect for. She's been teaching for so long. She's been walking the path of full-time teachers for almost 20 years. And she is always learning. She's always taking courses, training to further deepen her knowledge of yoga philosophy, especially Yoga Sutras. She has her teacher that she goes to for her philosophy classes, as well as one-on-one mentorship. I have a huge respect and admiration for Aimee. And when I say I can tell a real deal yoga teacher when I see them, Aimee is that person. She is a real deal yoga teacher in Long Beach, and we're so lucky to have her in Long Beach. So if you have not met her or taken any of her classes or offering, I highly, highly, highly recommend learning under Aimee. I still to this day take her weekly yoga philosophy, Yoga Sutras class. She teaches every Sunday, and you can join via Zoom or in person. And she is so good at teaching yoga philosophy. She's so good at making it practical, applicable to our day-to-day lives. And I don't think many teachers can teach that well, how to make the yoga philosophy so practical. So I really, really have a huge respect and love Aimee so much for continuing to teach, but also continuing to learn. And I get my inspiration from her for me to keep learning as a yoga teacher. Learning never ends. And I see that in Aimee. I see that she's always learning. She's now in a yoga therapy program, almost graduating to become a yoga therapist. And I can tell when teachers are really dedicated to yoga, the practice and learning of yoga, and Aimee is that person. So it was such a treat to be able to have this conversation with Aimee and have an opportunity to share Ashtanga yoga and her journey and her path to become authorized yoga Ashtanga teacher. And now she has her own shala that she runs in Long Beach. I think it's so inspiring to see her leading unconventional yoga teacher's path. So Aimee is the owner and primary teacher at Community Yoga Club, home of Ashtanga Yoga Long Beach, where she runs her daily Mysore-style Ashtanga Yoga program and offers individual yoga therapy with an emphasis on food and body relationship recovery. With decades of study in the Krishnamacharya lineage of both Ashtanga Yoga and Vini Yoga, she is an authorized Level 2 Ashtanga Yoga teacher and yoga therapist in ongoing training with the Yoga Well Institute. She also holds certifications in massage therapy, health and nutrition coaching, weight neutral and diet recovery coaching. She is a creator of the Yoga of Food and Body Respect, a yoga therapy program for folks looking for recovery from disordered relationships with food and body. She also sings in her dance rock band, theSTART. So I hope you enjoy the conversation I had with Aimee, and I will speak to you on the other side. Welcome, Aimee, for coming to join me on the Full-Time Yoga Teacher podcast. I am so grateful that you can be here with me today. And how are you doing today?
I am pretty darn good. Not bad at all.
Can you tell the listener, where are you logging in from?
I am right now, I'm in my home. I'm in Long Beach. I'm on the east side of Long Beach, not too far from the yoga school that I own.
Yes. And are you from Long Beach, or where are you originally from before you moved to California?
This is a super good question. I was born in a house about 2 miles away from here. So if you're in Long Beach and you're driving past Whole Foods on PCH, past 2nd Street, and then just past there is the little bridge, then you're in Seal Beach. First left, I was born in a house right there on Mar Vista.
Oh, I had no idea that you're actually from Long Beach.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Where have you lived in your life? Maybe tell us a couple places you lived.
Absolutely. So I was born in Seal Beach, and I lived in Seal Beach for most of my childhood. I lived in Wilmington for a little bit. My dad lived in Long Beach his entire life. And then I lived in Huntington Beach. So I was kind of staying in the area. And then I moved to Hollywood when I was 18. And I lived there pretty much solidly through until like early 2000s. And that's actually when I started doing yoga, when I was up in LA.
Let's start there. Like, what brought you to your first yoga class?
Yeah. I was pretty fried. I had just quit a band that had a record deal. We put out a record. We had toured all around. We toured Europe, UK, the States a bunch of times, and it ended up going really bad. And we got dropped by a record label. I quit the band, started a new band. And in between those two bands, I was talking to one of my friends. I was super stressed out and burnt out, and I never wanted to go to the gym again. I had been in entertainment forever. I had been in the music business for a while, and there's like a certain pressure on how you're supposed to look. And so I was continuously exercising, and I just wanted something that was like a little bit deeper. And I had heard about Madonna, and Madonna was doing this thing called Ashtanga Yoga, but I had no idea the only exposure to yoga that I had at that point was when I was a kid, that lady Lilius on PBS or whatever on television in the early mornings. She used to have a morning like hatha yoga show. It was super cool. And one of my friends I said, I don't know where to go. I want to try this yoga thing. And they said, go to Noah. And I didn't know what that meant, but Noah was a guy who had opened a traditional Ashtanga yoga school in Silver Lake, like Sunset Junction. So the east side of LA. And his wife, Kimberly, and he were teaching there. And I had no idea that other yoga was different. I thought all yoga was like this until about 6 months later, my friend was like, you always go to your yoga. You should come to my yoga. And I went to her yoga with her, and it was at Crunch at the gym. And there was like 40 people. There was like light shows. The girl had one of those headset microphones on, and literally it was like, there was push-ups, there was all kinds of madness. And I came out and I was so stressed out. And I was like, my yoga is so different. I never want to go to other yoga. And I kind of didn't ever go to other yoga ever again. End of story.
What year was that?
That was 99 when I started, 1999. I had to put the 19 because we're in a whole other century now. So it was 1999. And I think the school was called Ahimsa Yoga at that point. And it was tiny, could maybe fit 12 people. But it was like a really crazy, special place. I mean, it was really overwhelming actually, because half of the room was full of musicians, and several of them were like people that I was like in awe of. One of the people that I practiced with on the daily was Wendy Melvoin from Prince and the Revolution, Prince's band. Prince's guitarist was like 2 mats down from me every day. And Mike D from the Beastie Boys, and like there was actresses and actors coming and going. Willem Dafoe would be there. Gwyneth Paltrow would drop in. Madonna's sister was there. It was like super crazy famous. And it was like this dirty little hole in the wall with linoleum floors. And it was kind of gross. And like there was nothing fancy at all. Like it was literally like this little tiny stall on Sunset Boulevard. And it was kind of even cooler because of that,
I love that. I was curious about the year because I had no idea yoga, even in 1999 at Crunch Fitness, was microphone and, loud music or disco music.
Well, what they had done, actually, it wasn't, there was group fitness, like tons of group fitness at that time. So they were doing like Afro-Brazilian dance class and aerobics, and Taibo was like the big new thing, was like doing like martial arts aerobics. It was basically all aerobics. And so this one was, they started there. I think the first class that they offered there was called, you will love this, Yoga Booty Ballet. And that might have been the class that I took. It might have been Yoga Booty Ballet. I'm not sure. So I can't really say if it was like to think of a yoga class like that.
Would you mind sharing with us what was the name of your band that you were in?
The band that I was, so we were making the first record for my band, theSTART, at that point. Yeah, it was really, we were just waiting for our record to come out. That's why I ended up there. I was like, okay, I can't go on tour yet. I don't want to, I need something to entertain myself with. And so I ended up there. And literally, I went, so when I went to sign up there, Noah was like, you have to come 4 days a week. I prefer 6. You have to give me this much money right now. There's no refunds if you decide not to come back. He was super strict. And I didn't miss a class. I went 6 days a week, except for moon days, of course, for 6 months straight. And the first class I missed was I had to go to court. And I was like, wow.
So you were hooked from the beginning, from the first class.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a completely transcendent experience on from moment one for me. And it totally felt like a homecoming. There was something so familiar about it. But the thing that happened where everything, the shift that I can't really put words to, I just remember kind of coming back to myself. And it was this feeling of awe that was still, it was almost like a startle. It was such an awesome experience. Like it was so vast and it was so, I don't even know how to, there's no way to articulate it. And I went back to, I was living in a loft at that point in downtown LA. I went back to where we were living, and my husband now, but he was my boyfriend there. Then Jamie just said, oh, how was that yoga thing that you did? And I was like, I saw God and I'm going back tomorrow. That's all I could say.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I'm not a religious person. So
that's amazing. Even from the first experience of yoga, it was such a powerful experience for you.
Yeah. And, I think if it had been yoga booty ballet, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So from practicing, being a yoga practitioner and dedicated one, when did you start to feel that you may want to start teaching?
I had the feeling right away. I mean, from that moment with that super deep experience that I had, I kind of wanted to shout it from the rooftops at that point already. And I had this immense respect for my teachers and couldn't even entertain the notion of transmitting what they were transmitting. But I knew I wanted to teach, which was insane because at this point I was just about to release a record. So there was a whole career path in front of me, or I thought there was. There was but I had a direction that I was headed in. There was a trajectory that I was on 100%. And I knew it. It was I don't know if it was a foreshadowing. I don't know what it was, but from that moment, it was yeah, I want to teach this. I will teach this. It was just a knowing. It was really, and so that's that chicken or the egg moment, right? Was it that did I teach because I felt that way? Or did I feel that way because I was going to teach? It's really difficult for me to parse that out for you.
Yeah. I love that you knew from the very beginning that there was a knowing of that you wanted to teach this. And tell me the transition or journey from being a pretty dedicated practitioner along with your music career and becoming authorized teacher, because for listeners who don't know, maybe you can explain in Ashtanga Yoga, the road or the steps to become a teacher is quite different than 200-hour teacher training that we see commonly today.
Yeah, it's a lot different. There isn't really there. You don't decide. You don't say, I'd like to be a teacher. I mean, in a way you do. It's really student training. And I didn't consider teaching for about 5 years. I knew I wanted to teach from moment one, or I knew I would teach from moment one, but I didn't consider teaching for another, it was about 5 years later. I just practiced, and I learned Mysore style, which is you're taught one-on-one by your teacher, the sequence that's appropriate for you based on the set sequences of Ashtanga Yoga. And so it's not, I didn't have, my first lead class was 2 years in, other than Yoga Booty Ballet. So yeah, I was doing this, my own practice, my personal practice from day one, really for about 2 years. And at the 2-year point, the living guru of the lineage was coming to the US. And so our whole shala was like, okay, we better be on point. We better be good students and show the teacher that our teacher is a correct teacher, right? So Noah started teaching lead class once a week just to make sure that we were all clear on the steps of the vinyasa for the sequences that we would be practicing with Patanjali Jois. And that was 2002 that he came. I practiced with him.
Where was it? It
was at the Roosevelt in Hollywood, the hotel in the ballroom. How cool is that?
How many people were there?
It was 200 or plus probably at that point, and it was a total scene. It was pretty cool. It was really fun.
And that was before you went to Mysore. This was the first time.
Yeah, this was before I went to India. I knew I didn't know I wanted to go to India. I thought that was for, that was reserved for people that were completely dedicated, as if practicing 6 days a week was not dedicated enough. It was like the teachers that I was practicing with, they took time out of they had dedicated their whole life to teaching. They were full-time yoga teachers, and they were making a living at it, albeit a, very modest one. But they would take time every year. They would go for 2 to 3 months each year to India to go study. And that seemed so far away and so huge of a commitment to me at that point that I was like, okay. And my band was doing quite well at that point, and we were touring a lot, and we were really busy, and we ended up making 4 records and touring a lot. So it took me time to get enough space in my schedule to make a trip to India. And, you don't teach until you make a trip to India, or 3.
Yeah. So, after you started practicing Ashtanga, at what year did you go to India for the first time?
I went to India in 2007. In January of 2007. I started teaching prior to that, though, in a kind of interesting way. I had come home from tour. I had a 6-week break in between 2 tours. Noah and Kimberly had moved to Hawaii, and I was staying at my mom's house in South Orange County at this point because we were touring so much that I was subletting my apartment in LA. And there was 6 weeks, 200-hour teacher training at YogaWorks in Orange County. I had the time off. I was missing, I was still practicing on my own out there in the wild, doing my own self-practice without a teacher. But I was like craving being in a room with a teacher. And the teacher trainers for the program were 2 Ashtanga practitioners. It was James Brown, who's awesome. He's still awesome, and he still teaches, and he still does amazing things, and Catherine Monroe. And so it felt like it would be in the same vein as the things that I already had under my belt. And I did that training. It was on the weekends. My bestie in the training was Mia Togo. And at the end of the training, 2 people were recommended to teach for YogaWorks at that point, and it was Mia and me. And so they had a class open that they were looking for a teacher for. Surprise! It was an half Ashtanga, half primary series. Somebody was giving it up, and they needed a teacher. And they were like, you just finished the training. Do you want to teach this Ashtanga class? And I was like, I can do this. I already have 5-6 years of Ashtanga under my belt. And now I'm certified to teach. But I just did this very part-time in between tours. When I was home, I would teach this class. I would teach a couple classes at a couple of different yoga works. And I was on the sub list for yoga works. And then I started apprenticing under one of the authorized Ashtanga teachers in South Orange County. Her name is Diana Christensen. So I kind of did that for a couple of years, and then I went to India in 2007. So that was 2005 when I taught my first yoga class.
Mm. So it was Yoga Works in Orange County that you did your 200?
Yeah, it was Costa Mesa. Yeah.
And you said you wanted to take that 200 because you were missing the group environment, or like being in a community?
Yeah. And I thought that it would be a way to, I had 6 weeks and there was no Ashtanga in Orange County, 0. The only one was this class that I ended up taking over, right? Which was just a lead half primary once a week in the nighttime. And the teacher I took it over from was this lady, Diana, who got authorized. But that's why she was giving up the class, was because she had gotten authorized. And she was leaving Yoga Works to start her own shala. And so I took over her classes that she left. And then I ended up apprenticing for her later.
Okay. And what led you to become apprentice for her? What was that journey like for you?
The Ashtanga world is smallish, or at that time it was small. Now it's still small, but at that point it was quite small. There was probably only 30 or 40 authorized and certified teachers in the world at that point.
Yeah, that's not that many.
It was small at that point. And so you kind of knew who all the teachers were. And when I showed up in class, I had I had 5 years of practice under my belt. So she's opening her shala and I show up as a student, and I already have a strong foundation, and I'm certified to teach through Yoga Works. So not through, not in the traditional Ashtanga system. I wasn't certified to teach or authorized to teach yet. But she had just gotten authorized in 2005. And so I went to practice Mysore style with her then. So I was teaching at the Yoga Works, and then I would practice with her in the mornings. And at a certain point, it just made sense for both of us. I asked her if I could assist, and she was like super happy, because it's really difficult to find teachers even now. For me, it's hard for me to find coverage for my classes if I need somebody. I'm the only authorized Ashtanga teacher in Long Beach. Diana's still one of 2 in Orange County. There's not that many in LA even now, because the pandemic caused a lot of movement. So it was still really rare. And to have somebody show up at her door that had that much practice under their belt made it easy for her to choose me as an assistant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's so great that in Ashtanga world, there's this apprenticeship that happens that I think it's missing today in a lot of the yoga world. There isn't teacher to student relationship. You learn under a teacher for a certain amount of time. You learn from this teacher, and you kind of grow as a teacher. And I feel like that is definitely missing from what I see in the yoga world. So I think it's so great that you were able to experience that, and now you also offer that to your students through your shala.
Yeah, it's kind of the way that Ashtanga continues to build teachers is in this manner. I said it already, but it's not teacher training, it's student training. And that at a certain point, the student has enough knowledge to just start teaching. And so it's much different than the signing up for, like, I have decided that I want to teach. I'm going to find somebody that's qualified and ask them to teach me to teach. It's much different, right? They don't know you in a teacher, like a 200-hour teacher training. It's often not the case, as it was with me when I did my first 200-hour. They didn't know me. I'd never met them before. They don't know how I operate my life. They don't know what my practice looks like. In fact, I think maybe they only saw me practice a few times. When you're in a teacher training, you're not like doing your practice in front of people, really, not that much. And that aspect of it, like understanding what one of my assistants knows, there's no auditions for teaching. I think that's a thing out in the wild, isn't it? I'm calling it the wild. Is that offensive?
Yes, there's definitely.
I'm calling the yoga studios. I'm calling everybody's local yoga studio the wild.
I'm curious.
I should probably explain why I'm calling it the wild.
Okay, explain.
Well, the Ashtanga system is so structured. And, the conversation that we're having already is sort of, speaking to that structure. It's like, it is classical teacher-student relationship. And there's the sequences have a direction that they go in and they have purpose. First we're getting the body healthy and well and in a state of, maintenance, I guess you would call it, but like recovering from deficits is the hope. And then you move into this sort of like extraordinary capacity where you're doing things that you didn't think were possible. This is all really structured. So is the way that one becomes a teacher. You assist under you study with your teacher, you assist under your teacher, hopefully, and then you go study in India. And then you go study again in India. And then you go study again in India. There is a rough guideline, but it's not fixed because it's not like you sign up for a teacher training. But typically, if you are stable and serious student, you'll generally get permission to teach after about 3 long trips to India. So 3 trips of 2 or 3 months ago. Every now and then there's an outlier that spends less time or has spent more time, has been 5 times or 2 times. But generally it's like you have to go and be there and spend a lot of time in India with studying with the teacher in order to have shown an amount of stability and ability to teach. And it seems like what happens outside of that system. I know there are other systems. I think Iyengar has a kind of actually more structured way to get permission to teach. But it sort of feels like and the reason why I'm calling it out in the wild is like, I understand there's Yoga Alliance standards, but other than that, it's, individual yoga schools, they say, hey, we're going to teach some teachers. And then a bunch of people apply. And then the classes are sort of built I think I should not say so much of what it's just what I think because I haven't spent a lot of time taking studio classes. But it seems like each class is kind of a one-off and, it has a specific purpose. But there's no unifying sort of theory that unites a yoga studio. I think maybe Kind of Yoga Works was doing it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think a lot of studios, there isn't a lot of common thread, maybe that classes and the teachings and philosophies. And, it's kind of every teacher get to kind of choose what flow they want to teach that day.
Yeah. So that's where the in the wild comes from for me. It's sort of like choose your own adventure. You don't know what you're going to get out there. Yeah. Like, I know if I show up at a Ashtanga school somewhere else in the country, I know what I'm getting. I'm going to walk in. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. If I go to any other class, I can kind of gauge what I'll be getting by what the stated level is. and maybe the temperature of the room. But other than that, I'm not sure what's going to happen. So that's why I call it the wild.
Yeah. And I think it's true nowadays, there isn't really even application to attend a teacher training. You just have to be able to pay for it, and they would be more than happy to have you, even if you just started yoga 1 month ago. So
yeah. That when I moved to Long Beach, I started being a guest teacher for trainings here, explaining what Ashtanga yoga was. You came with me a couple times because we don't teach teacher trainings in Ashtanga yoga. And I actually I asked my teacher permission. I asked Sharath in India, I asked him permission to take part in somebody else's teacher training. And he said, "Are you teaching people to teach in this training?" And I said, "Nope, I'm just explaining Ashtanga yoga to the people that are being trained by the person who's teaching them." And he said, "Better you than someone else." That was my fancy permission to take part in the teacher trainings.
That's I remember you told me the same thing. Better you than someone else, because I
did tell you that
about Ashtanga in another teacher training, 300-hour teacher training. It was just like a module of it that I think was the purpose was it to expose these teachers of different styles of yoga that exist. And I remember asking you for permission, and you said it's better you than somebody else. And I wasn't teaching how to become Ashtanga teacher, same thing. I was teaching them what Ashtanga yoga is and how it's different from maybe what people are used to in typical yoga studio.
And I think there's a really big misconception about what Ashtanga is in most places. So I'm super grateful that you're out there letting people know when you do what it is.
Well, I'm curious, what made you feel like you were ready to go to India your first time that you went?
Honestly, okay, so it was a series of events that came over a course of years. And the first one was kind of strange. I had this dream that I was I had not been to India, nor had I met Patanjali Jois yet. And I dreamt I was practicing with him, and he was telling me something, and I was, I don't even remember what was going on, but I was being taught by him. And I went to class the next morning, and I said, "Noah, it was so weird. I had a dream about Patanjali Jois last night." And he just got this look on his face, and he goes, "It's time for you to go to India." And I was like, "Yo, I'm going on tour." Nope. And then when the family came, I did that class at the Roosevelt. Those classes, it was a couple weeks, 2 weeks of classes at the Roosevelt, and it was Patanjali Jois, his daughter Saraswati, and his grandson Sharath Jois that came to teach with him. And I spoke to Sharath, and I asked if I could come, and this was 2002. I said, "My teacher said it's time for me to go. Can I come?" And in those days, you had to write a letter to get like a handwritten letter, not an email. You actually had to post a letter in the mail, send it to them. You didn't get any notification if you got it back. So I asked him if I could come, and he said to send the letter. And I was like, okay, I'm so excited. But I didn't get space in my schedule for another until 2007. So I finally was able to block out 1 month in my schedule. I knew we had just finished recording. I think I finished a vocal, like the last vocal on that record. It was my third record, and with that band. And I finished the vocal, packed all night, got on the plane the next day, and flew off to Mysore. And when I got there, I was like, I hope they got the letter. Because you don't know. You just send it, or like you fly all the way there. Are they going to send you away? What happens, right? So that was the series of events. I had the dream. Noah said it's time to go. I asked Sharath, and then 4 years later, I finally went.
Wow. And then the first time you went was 1 month, you said?
Yeah, I went for 1 month on my first trip. Yeah.
And I would like to hear more about the going to Mysore and, actually practicing in Mysore, India, but also maybe after that, share how many times and how many years did you go to Mysore before they authorized you to become a teacher?
Yeah. So I went the first trip and it was actually really busy. It was the first time that they had too many students in the shala there. The shala there holds 55 to 60 at once. And so at that time, it was Patanjali Jois, his daughter Saraswati, and Sharath teaching 55 students Mysore style. And that was a lot for them. And it might not have been full to capacity at that point, but they were not allowing any more students. And Patanjali Jois was only teaching to 8 a.m. at that point. They would have been at 4. They would close at 8, and then Sharath would go over to this other smaller shala, and he would have his own classes. He would teach for 2 more hours. And so I knew that it was full, and I was afraid that when I got there, whether my letter would be there and whether I would be allowed. So I actually got somebody to give me Sharath's phone number. I called him on his cell in India. And he answers like this weird number. And I just explained my situation. I said, "Hi, I'm Aimee. I'm a student." At that point, I was Diana's student. I said, "I'm Diana's student. I know that it's crowded there. And I'm wondering if I can have permission to practice with you." And he said, "Yes, you come." So when I got there, I actually went to his small shala on my first trip, which was, 20 people. And by the time I was finishing, it was like 2 of us, me, this other person that was brand new, had never done, he was teaching Surya Namaskara to a brand new student, and I was finishing. I remember on that first day, I was so nervous because I was just me by the end of it. And I just remember him saying, "Don't hurry, slow down." Because I was like, "Oh my God, I'm on myself again." I feel like I'm taking his time, So it was almost a private. It was really cool. Yeah.
So you got to have a lot of individualized practice time with Sharath the first year.
Yeah, it was a bit of a different time, and then on that trip, I was still considered a student of the main shala. So I was allowed to go to conference with Patanjali Jois, and then I would take the Mysore classes with Sharath in the morning. So Sharath was teaching me Mysore style, and then I would go and listen to Patanjali Jois give the lectures. So I got to experience both in that first trip.
Is it something you communicate with them that, "Hey, I want to become a teacher someday"?
No, I had a vision that it would happen, but still it was like I was just going to study. It wasn't like a plan. It actually wasn't known then. There wasn't like a set. There definitely wasn't a set time amount of time that you needed to study at that point. There were no guidelines. It wasn't written down anywhere. There weren't any rules. Just certain people had been certified and certain people had permission to teach. And you were always, there weren't levels yet. That was coming pretty soon, right around the corner in the story. There weren't levels of teacher. Now there's levels. Now there's official paper that you get. But back in those days, only certified teachers would get a certificate. The other teachers would get the blessing to teach, is what was colloquially called in those days. And I just had I was still so sure that, a teacher was a different kind of being, and I was still super active in my band. Like I didn't have, I just knew I was going to teach, but I wasn't gunning for it, I'm not gunning for it at all. In fact, I had just like such a respect for the system that let's progress. So I was there for the 1 month in the small shala with Sharath, and then in the main shala with Patanjali Jois. And then the next trip was 2008. So I went back the next year, and I was in the main shala. Patanjali Jois was less well at that time. And so he was only teaching it was sort of Sharath's room already at that point. So it was Sharath, Saraswati, Patanjali Jois, but he would be sitting in the chair at the front, and sometimes he would be napping, and sometimes he would leave, and sometimes he would go. But he always gave the conferences. But as far as the asana, at that point, he was already a little more hands off, and Sharath was really doing most of the literal heavy lifting. And the next year, Patanjali Jois died. And so everything became a little bit confusing. Within that time, between 2008 and 2009, these guidelines came out. In order to be authorized, you have to come at least minimum. Oh no, that wasn't on the list of things. You had to come every 18 months, and you could only teach what they said. There became an authorized level 1, authorized level 2, and certification. So level 1 was primary series only. Level 2 was primary and intermediate. And then certification, you could teach up to where you had learned of the series. And so that was when things got, and nobody would, and then it was then it was said out loud that you couldn't teach teacher trainings, because there were people teaching Ashtanga teacher trainings, even though it was not sanctioned, I guess. I mean, it wasn't traditional. You weren't supposed to do it. And so at that point, when they sent a letter to all of the teachers with blessing, there was an unofficial list on ashtanga.com. And so they sent out this letter saying the new guidelines, and that they had their own website now. Ashtanga.com was kept by a practitioner, and they were just nicely keeping the database of teachers who had blessing, so that when somebody like me was like, I'm in New York City, I could see, there's this guy and this guy and that girl, and I know where am I going to be? I can go to those. So there was like a nice little database of the teachers on ashtanga.com. And at that point, they said, they're creating their own website. It became KPJAYI or AYRI.com or something. And they put an official list of teachers. It wasn't just a nice person putting up a list. And that's when the official, you may not teach teacher trainings. Everybody knew it, but some people, in our business, as you know, that's how some people manage to pay the bills, is through teacher trainings. Because I know that most of the content of your podcast is about how hard it is to actually make a living as a full-time yoga teacher. And so a lot of the folks that actually do it do end up teaching teachers to teach in some capacity as you go. And so it was kind of like, and there were other guidelines. So you had to maintain a Mysore room. So you had to have you had to do all of the things. You had to take one day a week off. You had to honor moon days. You had to teach as you've been taught. You had to, it was all of the like classical things that made a Mysore school a Mysore school. You had to agree to all of that, agree to come at least once every 18 months, and that, the levels. So that's when it started to kind of get a little bit more standardized. And then like 6 months after that, Patanjali Jois passed.
So it became
92.
It became more organized, the standard process before he passed.
Yeah, just before. Okay. Yeah.
And
just before he passed.
Second time you went to India, how many months did you go?
I went for 2 that time. Yeah. I went for two months. And then it took me a minute to get there after Patanjali Jois had passed. But I ended up going at the tail end of 2010. So I got there in October of 2010, and I stayed for 4 months. And I remember on my second month there, one of my friends, Ursula, she's totally amazing. She was just beaming and she was like, I got authorized to teach. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. How many times have you been here? She's like, it's my third trip. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So getting authorized is possible. And it just like clicked into my mind that it was possible. Not that I was getting it on this trip, nothing like that. Like I didn't think it. And also Ursula had a really, she was a much more, she'd been practicing. I don't know if it was more time there. Her trips were more because it was the same number of trips, but she was already into second series there, which was kind of a big deal at that time because not that many people were. It was like 8 or 10 people in the lead second series classes. It was that small, right? So it was like, whoa, Ursula's in the second series class. And she got authorized. And I was like, wow. And it was weird because it's kind of that thing. It's like, sometimes I talk about it as way power. I heard that from somebody else. I think it was some positive psychologist said, it's not willpower. It's not, I'm going to work, but if I can see that it's possible and know that it's possible, then it becomes possible, you know? And I was like, whoa, okay. So people do, it's a thing. Like this is, you don't have to go 7 times and it's not going to be your whole life. I'm like, wow, maybe I could teach this. And the next month, I was doing a back bend and I stood up and my teacher was right in front of my face. And I looked at him and he goes, how many times? And I said, oh, I have 2 more, thinking he was saying, how many back bends have you done? I said, I have 2 more. He goes, no, coming to my sir. How many times? I said, this is my 3rd time. He goes, you come see me later. You know what for. And I didn't. I was like, I either just got authorized to teach or I'm in trouble for something.
Yeah.
So his office hours were at 4 p.m. and it was like 4 a.m. I was probably 6 a.m. by that time because I finished my practice. But it was really early. So I had to wait that whole 10 hours, not knowing if I was in trouble because I was, in order to live there for 4 months and afford it, I was doing massage. So I was illegally working. So I was taking money from other yoga students to do massage for them. And I was like, I'm either getting in trouble for doing that or I'm getting authorized to teach. And then it was really funny when I got there too, because I came and I sat and you kind of wait for your turn and I'm in the foyer and they're like, okay, it's your turn, you go. I go in and I sit down and he's typing on his computer and he looks up and he goes, yes. And I said, you said, come see you later. You know what for? He goes, no, I didn't. And I was like, my stomach dropped.
What?
And he types a little bit more. And all of a sudden I hear the printer go and he goes, just kidding. And he takes the paper, hands me the paper. He goes, you fill this out. Don't leave. Bring it right back. Like he meant like, don't go home and fill it out. He just go to the lobby, fill it out and bring it back. And I was like, application for authorization. So then you fill it out and then they process it and then you can collect it later on. But I still had 2 more months of the trip while I was there. So it was kind of cool. It was like I had made a pretty big achievement on that trip.
Yeah. And during that trip, was there any time that he was teaching you how to teach Ashtanga?
No. He did ask me, had I been an assistant with anybody when he gave me the paper. He said, did you assist anybody before? And I said, yes, I have assisted. And then he said, okay, next time you come, you assist me. And so it was kind of that way.
So the next time you come to India is when you started assisting him?
Yeah, the next trip. Yeah. And so it's really when you get authorized in the Ashtanga system, it's really the beginning too. A way more in-depth beginning than a 200-hour training. But it is really sort of like okay, now you'll assist me in the shala. Now now you actually have a little bit more responsibility as a student too. Like he's much more discerning. He's much more focused on you and making sure that you're not doing things inappropriately outside of class or inside of class.
And that's when you started the next time you came to India isn't the time that you started learning how to count and, lead, be able to teach a lead primary?
I had already, because I had such great teachers in the beginning, knowing Kimberly, I had already I learned the asana names and I learned the asana names right away and started learning just rudimentary Sanskrit terms and things like that and pronunciation. And I learned a little, Kimberly taught me how to write my name in the Devanagari script on my mat. And then I had learned to teach. I had been teaching that half primary at Yoga Works. So I had already been leading lead classes. And then I was assisting under Diana down in Dana Point. And I had my own lead full primary at Dana Point for a while. And then when Diana would go to India to study, because she had to go every year or year and a half, I would cover her classes. So I would teach her Mysore program and her lead classes in addition to my own. And then, so I had been pretty full on in learning how to teach. So yeah, I had been teaching lead classes for a while. There later on, so there's been 4 official teacher only courses in Mysore. There was one in 2000. There were 2 in 2009. I think it was. It was for a primary series teacher's course, and a second series teacher's course or intermediate series teacher's course. And it was really just a period of time where only teacher students were invited, and they Sharath would go over details for his already authorized teachers. So it wasn't how you got authorized, but it was instruction in how to teach once you're authorized. And there were 2 more, one in 2014 and one in 2016. And I attended the one in 2016. Mm-hmm. And it's 80 or 90 total students. And there's only 2 batches of Mysore classes, the early one and the second one. And then all of the teachers assist each other, there's groups of assistants. So, in the morning now, all of the authorized and certified teachers are the assistants in the shala. Mm-hmm. So it's just Sharath that's at the head of the class. And then the authorized and certified teachers are the assistant teachers at the shala. Mm-hmm. So when I was there last in 2022, I took an assistant slot. And there's there's about 60 students now at a time in the Mysore style taught classes. And in the lead classes, there's 300 people at once with just Sharath.
In the Instagram stories, whenever I see it, it looks like huge gymnasiums of hundreds of people lined up.
It's huge. The Mysore style is still kept to a small batch. And there's usually 4 to 5 assistant teachers plus Sharath. So it's about a 12-to-1 ratio for student to teacher.
And when you're assisting Mysore in India, when does your practice fit in? Is it before you assist or after you assist?
So when you arrive in India, you get a time. You don't get to decide unless you have a child with you, which if you have a child with you, you get an open practice time. You can come at any time during the session that is open. But otherwise, as soon as you register, your time that you're supposed to start is written on your card. And you have to carry your card at all times now too. And it's kind of been that way for about a decade now. So you get your start time. And so when you're an assistant teacher, you get your student time and your assistant time. And so this last time I was in the first batch of assistants, the first batch of students, the 4 a.m. start students, are longtime students. And the longtime teachers are the assistants in that batch. And then the next, it's usually like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30. That's how the start times roll out. The first assistant batch, you'll usually teach till 7 a.m. So 3 hours of teaching. And then you just go and you change your clothes, grab your mat, and then you start whenever there's a space for you to start. That's how assisting works. One time I did the opposite, where I practiced before and taught in the second batch. That was my first assistant time. I assisted in the second batch and practiced at the 4 a.m. And then on my second assisting trip, I apparently graduated to being able to assist the big kids and practice after. And you want to know something? I felt so amazing practicing after. And Sharath was like, I stood up from a back bend one time and he's like, Aimee, is this you? Lifting students is very good for you before practice. So now that's how I schedule my day. I teach and then I practice afterwards.
So how many times in total have you traveled to India? And out of that, how many have you been assisting?
I have been 9 total trips. I kept an apartment for 1 year because the 1 year I went more than once in that year. I had an apartment in 2016 to 2017, and I went in for a couple months at the beginning of 2016, and then I did the teacher's course in the middle of 2016, and I went back in 2018, but gave the apartment up. I assisted 4 total times, and the last time was a little short. The 2 of the times were short.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So amazing. Thank you for sharing that story, because I think it's so fascinating for me and also all the listeners to hear how different the journey is.
Yeah. It is a little bit granular, so I don't know. I don't know if it's that interesting to everybody.
No,
it is.
I find it super interesting. But okay, I'm curious. You were a musician and then you were practicing.
Mm-hmm.
How did that transition happen of maybe you were doing both and then maybe slowly you became more doing teaching and doing yoga and less music, and eventually you became more just yoga? So
it was actually kind of interesting because I had the touring was slowing down a little bit. So I went ahead and got massage certification so I could have extra money so I could still have flexibility, the same kind of flexibility to go on tour, but then like have something to actually bring money in while I was off tour. And so I was teaching for Diana. I had my little Thursday night primary series class, and I would assist her on Saturday mornings and do other things like that. And then I was working, doing massage. And we scheduled a tour in the summer of 2010. And I was like, it was so hard. That tour became really, it just was so difficult for me. And there were some stupid things that happened, like clubs. We arrived at the club to play our show and they had shut down the club 3 days before and it wasn't a club anymore. Or we couldn't get a hold of the promoter to figure out when we were supposed to show up, who was playing when, how we were going to get paid, all that stuff. It was just this really difficult tour for some reason. And I just finally, I quit, and I got home and I just said, I need a break from touring. I'm going to go to India. And Jamie, my husband now, I think we were still not married yet. He said, oh, I'm going to go play for this other thing. And he said, we're supposed to do this USO date. I'm going to fly into India and I'll meet you in December. I'm like, awesome, I'll go. So when he left for tour, I left for India. And then in the middle, like 2 weeks in, his tour got canceled. But I was already scheduled to be there for 4 months. So now he's home for 4 months and I'm in India for 4 months. And I had already said, I don't think I want to tour anymore. And then I got authorized to teach. And then he got an offer to be in another band that was like one of my favorite bands of all time. And so it was like the whole thing just lined up perfectly. Like I was needed a break from playing music and was ready to teach. And then Sharath said, "You're ready to teach." I'm like, whoa, that's so weird.
Yeah.
And then Jamie was touring with this other band. So it wasn't like I was abandoning him, because he was in my band with me. And so I came home and I actually decided that I was going to start a program in Long Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was in 2011. I came home with my certificate, my authorization certificate in my hand. And I asked Gabriel at Yoga World, which you probably don't even know, but Yoga World, do you remember Yoga World?
Yes, I do remember Yoga World. I've been to there
Yeah.
a couple times.
So I asked him if I could rent space in the morning from him to open a Mysore school, because I didn't have any students or anything like that. So I didn't want to do a big investment. And so I started that. And about 4 weeks in, I got a call from Andrew Hillam, and he said, "I'm going to India and I want you to sub my classes at Jois." And so I spent 2 months subbing for him, and I gave up the idea of AYLB at that time, even though I started it, and continued to do massage and work part-time for Jois. And then finally they offered me a full-time position at Jois, and I moved down to Encinitas, had my own program in the evenings and at Jois Yoga in Encinitas.
Wow. So it kind of seems like it kind of flowed, these opportunities and how it happened, the transition. Before you started teaching or made that transition, you said most of your livelihood income was able to come from music and massage, especially towards the end. And when you came back came back after being authorized, you were slowly transitioning away from music and just doing teaching yoga, subbing, and also massage here and there. And that's kind of how you were able to support yourself.
Yeah. Jois Yoga was a legit job.
Maybe
there was a salary.
Is it a company?
So Jois Yoga was a company that was sort of a satellite of the school in India. It wasn't. It was not officially a part of the KPJAYI, the Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga Institute, but it was started in his name and with the permission of the family. It was sort of like an honorary school for them. Before he passed, they opened one in Florida, and after he passed, they continued to open. They opened 4 more, I think it was one in Encinitas, so it was 4 total. One in Encinitas, one in Greenwich, Connecticut, one in Australia, and the one in Florida. And so you had to be authorized in order to teach there, but it was funded. It was well funded by one of Patanjali Jois's students, who is a philanthropist, and started the company in order to promote Ashtanga Yoga and to support really the authorized teachers too. And so it was a fully salaried job with benefits and paid education. So our trips to India were paid.
That's amazing.
Airfare, tuition. I had health insurance. I had a salary every month that was the same. I didn't have to meet numbers even. There were numbers that were happening, like there were students, but I didn't have to have a head count to get paid. It was the same every single month. I had hours that I had to keep, but that was it. It was amazing.
How many hours?
Yeah, it was.
You think you were working for that?
I was teaching about 20 hours a week, and there was some admin in there too. And, we were guaranteed, there were 3 of us in my school that I was teaching at. I taught the evening program. I taught from 4 to 8 p.m., Monday through Friday. That felt like a lot at the time, 20 hours. It's different than teaching 20 classes, because it's, you're showing up at 4, you're staying in one place, and you're teaching who comes and goes through those 4 hours, as opposed to having to hustle to one place or the other place, or show up at 5 o'clock in the evening and 7 o'clock in the morning. It's a little different than holding a schedule like that, but it's still 20 hours of teaching.
Yeah.
And then, meetings, admins, emails, handling some of the stuff like that.
That's amazing that it was salaried. There was benefit.
Yeah.
And they cared about your continuing education. They paid for your flight or your trip to get there. That I always wish there were more yoga studios or schools that did that. Yeah. Because there are companies out there that pays for their employees continuing education, or go to, pay for them to go to the conference or whatever it is. There isn't anything like that, or it's rare to find something like that in the yoga world. So I think that's really
it was really kind of amazing. It was a really, really amazing thing that they were doing, and it was, supportive of the lineage through the because they were supporting teachers that were authorized, so it was like a direct passage of this. So there would be, traditional Mysore style Ashtanga yoga. That's what they were wanting to maintain because they had such dedication to their teacher.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And was that salary enough to live your daily livelihood at the time?
Yeah, it was 100% a living wage. Yeah.
Amazing. And
in fact, at that point, I was like, whoa, I can't believe I'm making this much money.
And how many years did you work for them? And what happened to that?
I was there part-time from 2011. I moved there in 2012, and I got my full-time gig at the end of 2012, right before I got married. And then I was there from the end of 2012 through the end of 2014 when I moved back to Long Beach. So it was really 2 years in the full-time position.
And what happened to that company?
It looked like, the amount of money that was going out. We were in a really amazing schmancy building on PCH and Encinitas. So, and it had a retail store in the front, and there were 4 of those, right? So there was a lot of money going out, and it was probably about the same size as my program is now. Right. So it was definitely not enough income to sustain, probably not even our salaries, to be fair. I don't know how the retail did up front because it was pretty jamming up there. But I know that space was huge. So it couldn't have been less than $10,000 a month on itself, just on basic rent, not talking about insurance or anything else. So it was definitely losing a lot of money for them. And so, it was one of those knowings. I was having problems with my landlord. I was renting this house there. That's a totally crazy story that we won't get into, but I was like, okay, I got to move out of this house, but I'm not going to get another house there. I just have this weird feeling. I don't know how to explain it, but I got this weird feeling. So I'm just going to commute for a while, go stay with my mom, and commute for a while. Jamie was still touring in his band at that time. One of his bands at that time. At that time, it was a band called And You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead, who I absolutely love. Fantastic band. So he was still going back and forth. So and it was just me. So we didn't really need to keep a place. And I would just drive, because she lived in South Orange County, and it was like 45-minute drive for me to go down there if there was no traffic. And the big boss, Andrew, he said, are you going to get another place? And I'm like, I'm just going to hang out because it's summertime and it's expensive in the summer. I'm just going to hang out and see how things go. And I got this feeling that it was time for me to move to Long Beach. I was just like, I shouldn't be in Encinitas anymore. I need to go to Long Beach. I already owned 2 houses here, very small, but I had tenants. Oh, so there's another piece of the income. So there were tenants paying the mortgages on the houses that I owned here, but I knew that they were there. So I had like some security to be able to be as wild as I was being. Right. And I was like, okay, I'm going to tell my tenant that I'm going to give him notice that he has to move out in September. I'm going to quit Joyce, and I'm going to move into that house in September, and I'm going to start back up Ashtanga Yoga Long Beach. That's what I said. And I'm like, I totally chickened out and I couldn't give the guy notice. I was like, I can't do it. I don't want to tell him. 30 days later, he calls me and says, I'm going to give you 30 days notice. I'm moving out in September.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, that's weird. And I started to kind of put it into place. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give a notice for Joyce. And I went in and I said, okay, Andrew, I'm going to give you notice and I'm going to teach for you as long as you need. I'm not going to leave. So it's not like a 2-week notice. I'll teach for you as long as you need. And he goes, okay, just hang out. I don't want to give you a final date or anything, but just hang out. And I'm like, okay. He goes, but don't do anything yet. I'm like, okay. 3 days later, he calls me and says, I have to tell you, we're going to have to let you go. So I was going to be let go anyway.
Yeah.
But because he didn't allow me to resign quite yet, he said, hang out. I was able to get severance package, unemployment, and the whole 9 yards to get me set up as I moved to Long Beach. So it was another one of those like really just following my knowing situations.
Yeah. And they were letting you go because they needed to like downsize. They were
they were downscaling. They actually let there was 3 full-time teachers, and 2 of the 3 got let go. There was Andrew still has Joyce down in he's in San Diego, not in Encinitas proper now.
Okay,
San
so
Diego.
he's still there, but just one teacher.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay, so now you moved to Long Beach, and tell me.
I moved to Long Beach.
Being a full-time yoga teacher, and from there to Long Beach.
Yeah, so I was lucky to have that severance pay and unemployment to bridge the gap as I was starting this new thing. And I didn't want to. There's something about having your whole own school and your own program and being the only person and not having coverage and being alone in it. And so there was a woman that was teaching one lead Ashtanga class a week at Kava Yoga at that time. And I asked her if she wanted to partner in the business. And I was still the primary teacher. I was teaching the Mysore classes Sunday through Thursday, and she was teaching Fridays, and we shared in the business. And we, that way I could still go to India and she could go to India. Mm-hmm. And so we could cover each other's classes, and we could call in sick to each other. So it was nice for me to have that piece of a partnership, to not have to just be holding all of the weight, the responsibility of which luckily I'm not doing that anymore, but I was for a little while here after Sati and I did that for a couple years. And then she moved to Encinitas, which was totally weird, right? So she's still down there.
Is she authorized?
She's not authorized. No.
She was already teaching Mysore style.
She wasn't teaching Mysore. Her first foray into Mysore was being the second teacher for me. So she was doing Friday Mysores once under my authorization umbrella. Okay. Yeah, so she was technically an assistant. Yeah,
I see.
And she was I think she was interested in being authorized. She went a few times to India. I'm pretty sure. I think she was still practicing down at Joyce. So she ended up at Joyce. Totally weird.
And how long were you at Kava Yoga?
Kava Yoga, we lasted 2014, end of 2014 to end of 2016. And then we moved into the loft over recreational, which used to be called Howl at that point. I'm not even sure what's in there now. But again,
they still rent it out for event. But that's where I met you when I started coming.
Yes, that's where I met you. Yeah, so I was ready to have more hours because I was renting 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. from Cindy over at Kava. And I was ready to have more hours, and they had a pretty solid following from 8:30 on. And so she wasn't ready to give up any of her hours. And so I decided that I would go over to Howl. And it was right about then that Sati and I split and AYLB became solely mine.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
then it was Sikhan.
You were renting even Kava,
Yeah.
which is a yoga studio for those who may not know what Kava was. Kava Yoga was a yoga studio in Long Beach. You were renting it and you weren't part of their teaching staff and getting paid from Kava. You were paying the owner a space to rent from a certain time of the day. And you were finding your own students.
Exactly.
Were you able to get students trickled from Kava?
Not really. There wasn't a lot of crossover. Sati had a class at Kava. Like not Ashtanga Yoga Long Beach. She was on the schedule at Kava. That's why she said, "Oh, do you want to rent from Cindy?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So she was already there. That's where she was teaching the lead class there, and so she had a little Ashtanga base of her students, and so a couple of her students came over, but really it wasn't a lot of crossover from any of the other classes.
When you first started renting the space, teaching it, did you have students right away, or was it very small and it slowly grew? How did that go?
I mean, it's still kind of small, right? So it started to grow. It was, so I'm proud to say we were always in the black. There was never a month where we paid more than we made from the beginning. From class one. So that's cool. And it's still that way, luckily. So we were always in the black, but it wasn't super lucrative. And then when Sati split off, it became a little bit more possible. I mean, I have a husband who is in a band that he makes money touring. But yeah, I mean, we could pay all our bills with what I make. To be fair, we're not like super fancy. We're not super fancy people. And we already had our houses. They're not paid, but the mortgages are quite affordable for this area.
So in the beginning, when you were starting off and maybe your student base were smaller, you never spent more than you never was in red. You said you were in black, but you were able to have a little cushion with your husband also working, but also house, all of those was enough, a little bit of cushion.
Well, I had that severance pay.
Yeah.
That severance pay coming over. So that covered a few months. So I had, in order to get to a point where it was growing enough, it was fine. And then I had one house with a tenant. And it wasn't a lot of money on top of the mortgage being paid, but it was a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What sparked you to move from that loft space and actually open your own space?
So it's another following. I don't know what was going on, but I was like really feeling unsettled about Howell and I loved that space, but I was like, I had a roving eye. I was looking every space that had a sign that said rental. I was like, oh, that building. Ooh, that building. Ooh, that building. And at one point, Dharma said, hey, we're going to take the other side. Remember the old Yogalution that had their space that they were in and that had that weird shop next door that opened? Well, she was like, I want to expand into that shop there. It's open now. Would you want to anchor the building? And I was like, yeah, I'll rent the mornings from you. That would be great. Because it would have been a little cheaper than Howell because she had her whole day where Howell was like that event space. So it would have saved me a little bit of money. It would have been closer to my house. It would have been in a yoga community. I was like, yeah, let's do it. But for some reason, I couldn't see it. Like my mind, it wouldn't go all the way to the visualization. I kept trying to picture it. Like I'm teaching in the room. I can't see it. It was super weird. And there was this building on Anaheim that I had been obsessed with since we moved to Long Beach because I had to drive by it on the way back from Kava to my house every single day. I was like, that building. I even pulled over and asked for the manager's number from one of the tenants one day and was like, what's this building like? And they're like, oh, here's your number, blah, blah, blah. So my husband and I are walking the dog. The thing with Dharma keeps getting pushed off until finally she decides she's not going to take it. We're walking the dog. There's a little lady outside of the building. And I'm like, are you the manager? And she's like, why? I said, oh my gosh, I love this building so much. I would love to rent here. I would love one of these downstairs spaces. And she goes, nobody ever leaves here. Nobody ever leaves, but email me anyway. 2 days later, my husband's walking the dog and she's like, tell your wife to email me. There's a place coming available.
Wow.
Totally weird. So I just went up there and I was about to leave for India. I didn't even know if it was possible to teach yoga because sometimes the business license, the use for the building isn't, you have to do a change of use permit. And so I had to do all the shuffling before I was getting on a plane to go to India to see with the city if I could actually teach yoga in the building. And it turned out had professional services as one of the uses. And I just had to do a little thing. So I gave her money and said, hold this place for me. I want it. I'm going for 2 months, but I'll be back. And came back, got the place, and the rest is history.
Wow. Was there ever a fear of you took a very unconventional route in terms of yoga teacher of you wanted to start your own, you were always renting to have your own program there, and then you switched to renting another place and now finding your own place. Was there ever fear of what if I don't have enough students next month, or what if I don't make enough money to pay rent? Or was there any fear like that, kind of venturing on your own?
No, there was one really wise piece of information, and it was actually Sati's choice. That space that was Yogalution that we're talking about was open for a little while. So weird. Long Beach is so weird. It was about to be rented, and I was considering taking the space, and it was a pretty hefty rent to have that space. And I, just for me, I didn't want to manage other yoga teachers. I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought maybe I would rent to other people at the nighttime or kind of, figure it out that way. But I was like, oh, and I said, Sati, let's take this space. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay. She's like, let's just rent at Kava. And I was like, all right, you're right. And that piece of not getting in over my head in the beginning, so that the investment, that's why we were always in the black, because the investment was never more than what was already visible as far as a student base. And so I knew we could pay the rent off of the students that we already had on day one. And because it is Ashtanga and I'm the only authorized teacher here, it does have a bit of an organic base. People, they look up who's the local teacher. I'm the local teacher and they come. So there's that piece that is built in for me. And then there's the, growing up the community that happens organically. I'm not a real big or good marketer. That's not true. I'm really good at marketing. It's hard for me to market yoga.
I think of you as a great example. And I actually share your story a lot as a great example when I'm speaking with other yoga teachers or in my mentorship group, because a lot of teachers think that we need to have a bigger presence on social media. We need to pay for advertisement. We need to have, we need to do all this outreach. And I always say you don't have to. You can choose to have social media presence or choose to, dedicate some time and effort into doing more on social media. But I always say, look at Aimee. You don't have to be paying huge advertising. You don't have to put your class on Groupons or ClassPass. There's teachers, yoga school like your Shala that is doing well, successful, and bringing people in without those things. And it doesn't always have to be this fancy, flashy way to promote. There's always, there's different styles of doing it. And I think you do it your way, and it attracts the right people to come.
Yeah. One of the things that's actually pretty traditional in the lineage, at a certain point, when some of the teachers were getting their blessing to teach way back, the legend has it that's not a legend. I was told that Patanjali Jois said, it's time for you to teach as I taught you, teach what you know, and don't advertise. and don't discount the yoga because people won't value it. And so that is, there's a way to, it's smart to tell people that you exist and what time you exist at and how to get in the door, which we're still a bit of a speakeasy. It is still a bit of a mystery as how to start. And I think that confounds people. I've had people say that it's difficult, but, so there is, you do want to have you want to have some visibility and like you want people to know that you exist and how to get there. But I don't think you have to be selling yourself constantly. I think it can be detrimental to your teaching. It can be detrimental to your practice, and for my money, keeping your practice and your studies alive is the most important part of being a teacher.
Very true. And I think that's one of the many reasons that I have a huge respect for you with your dedication to continuing education. It's so important. And I really look up to and inspired to be teachers that I know, like yourself, who are always learning and who's very dedicated to the practice and teachings of yoga.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to say one piece of advice, it's like, make sure you're practicing. Make sure you have an outside reference for your practice. So that's a teacher. And, the amount of information, the depth of the depth of wisdom that you can find in yoga, there is no possible way you could ever have enough time in this lifetime to understand it all. There's no way. So if somebody's like, yeah, I'm good, I don't need to study anymore, I'm like, ooh, do you know about this? Because I just found out about this and now I'm in that rabbit hole and it's going to take me another 10 years to understand that.
So true. Was there any point in your life, maybe when you were transitioning your career from music to more yoga, did you have any doubt in your mind about whether this is the right path or if it's a possible path? And also, was there any doubt from your friends or family or partner? Are you sure, Aimee, this is a path you want to choose and pursue?
It's so funny. It didn't even occur to me to doubt it at all. Honestly, as I'm reviewing it again, like as I'm telling you these stories, there's always like this following. There's always this knowing and following. It wasn't a lot of willpower. It was more way power for sure. And a lot of investment in education, obviously. But yeah, no doubt in that no doubt at all. My family, that meme of like, this is what I do. This is what my family thinks I do. This is what my friends think I do. There's still like miles between all of those things. And so there is a piece of my family, I think, that doesn't understand exactly what it is that I do. Like there's a lot of people in my life that actually don't understand what I do. They have a concept that they think, and I don't care to explain it. It's like not worth my time. They can continue to hold that belief of what they think it is that I do. But there was one time when one of my relatives said, "Oh, did you ever think about being a nurse? You'd be great at that." And I'm like, what about my life makes you think that I'm looking for something else to do? So it was a little bit like I took it a little personal, and I think there may be a little bit of a misunderstanding, like a lack of respect. I have a high reverence for yoga teachers. I think they're just like really important folks and super useful and super necessary. And what we do is it's really important. I just think it's really important. So yeah, I think there are some people that don't understand maybe what I do is important. But
what about, is there any aspects of full-time yoga teaching life that you love the most, and what do you find it the most challenging?
My favorite thing, and you already know this, my very favorite thing in the entire world is teaching Yoga Sutras. It's like the best thing that I do. And now that I'm teaching group yoga therapy programs, this new yoga therapy program that I created last year is just like another one of those like super important, super purpose driven things. Yoga, it's called the Yoga of Food and Body Respect. And it's a yoga therapy program for helping folks recover their relationship with food and their bodies. And I think that that's so foundational to what it is to be a human, just like being able to understand what it is to nourish yourself and respect the container. And, I don't even like to use the word container anymore because it feels so impersonal. But this incredible human thing that you're existing inside of, to understand it, respect it, enjoy it, love it, and feed it, and nourish it, that's so foundational to the rest of the things that we're able to do in our life. So those are my two favorite things. And asana is awesome too. Super fun. That's what I spend the most of my time doing because that's what most folks are interested in. And it really is a building block, and it can be used as a microcosm for all of the other teachings. So we can get a lot done on the mat, but it's really that watching the changes in people's lives, their relationships with themselves. That's the stuff that is really good sauce for me.
What about the most challenging part?
I'm not a morning person. My day, I have to open the doors at 7:00 7 o'clock Sunday, we'll call it Sunday through Thursday. And it's like, there is that thing when the alarm goes off, because I always wake up to the alarm where I'm like, no. And I'm like, okay, coffee, awesome. Oh, those people are great. I'm going to have a good time. But like that first getting over the morning thing, like if I had my way and I could just start at 10 a.m., my life would feel different. So that's a huge challenge for me still.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's an important time to be available for others because some people, like it's the only time that some people can come. So I'm working to get myself there for that. But yeah, that would be my challenge.
I had no idea you weren't the morning person because ever since I known you, you're early morning. I think you used to probably open the door at 6 a.m. and have to be there at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Oh my God. So hard for me. So hard. And admin. Mm-hmm. That would be the second thing. Mm-hmm. I love to teach. I love to be in the room. I love to study. I love to teach. I love to know. I like, this is so good. I love to help people not suffer. That's like really important. But the freaking admin, like who needs to like do accounting, taxes, business licenses? Blah. It's awful.
Yeah. Oh my God. It must be a lot, especially having your own space and, all the permits and all of that goes along. My business is mostly online, but I feel like I spend way more time than I think I should be spending on admin. It always takes more hours than I think or I expect.
Yeah. That and the fact that it's my own business, and so therefore, like I have to be really careful with boundaries. So, like if an email comes in on Saturday night, I have to go, do not answer it now. No, not it. No. I have to just leave it. So
that is hard. The boundary, I think. I'm still learning how to have a better boundary with my business. And, when am I working and when am I off clock is really, that boundary is hard to find when you're your own business owner.
Especially because sometimes the creativity part of the back end of business can be really interesting, like designing programs and like I'm going to do another spring intensive coming up and like thinking of the curriculum for that and like refining this yoga for food and body respect, that kind of stuff. That stuff's cool. So when some inspirational thing happens that way, I don't want to limit myself, but I also have to have like boundary. And it's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What about reflecting back to your yoga teacher journey you had, the career path that you had? What mistakes have you made in the past that you learned something from that you think our listeners would benefit from hearing from you? All the listeners who are a teacher or who are wanting to become a teacher or just starting on that path.
I think it's going to go back to that boundary. If if I could take back the hours that I didn't have boundaries in the last, so I started teaching in 2005. So I'm, oh my God, it's almost 20 years, 19 years. Wow. So if I could take back all those hours in the last 2 decades that I didn't maintain boundaries, I would have a lot of time, and I would have had, my quality of life would have been a little bit better. So I'm trying to be really careful with it now. Yeah. So I think that would be, not letting, I didn't let this happen very often, but there was times when it's difficult and I sacrificed my practice for other people's practices. Like if the time is running in a certain way, like I'll do a short practice so that I can be with a student. I think now I'm about at the point where I'm like going to draw a hard line there. So I would say those kind of boundaries, like making sure that you have time for your self-care, not self-care, let's call it self-maintenance, because self-care gets sort of over misconstrued. It sounds like it's extra, like it's something fancy that you're doing for yourself, but it's not. And it's like a huge part of yoga is maintaining, your human vehicle, your system, right? Mm-hmm. So like that, I think would be my biggest advice, is those kind of boundaries around your self-maintenance, your practice, and your time.
Yeah. I know you have helped me quite a bit with setting my own boundaries that has been very helpful. The change for me happened slowly, but I know there's been a big shift in my mindset. And even though the change is happening slowly, I am noticing that I am becoming better at creating healthy boundaries. So thank you.
Nice. Good. Yay. It's a win.
And what does your typical week look like as a yoga teacher?
I teach Sunday through Thursday about 3.5 hours of group classes. So I teach Mysore style on Sunday mornings and then yoga sutras after that. And then every day I teach Mysore style and during the week. And then I have private clients. I have 1 to 2 private clients during the week every day. Then I'm studying so much. I'm in like 4 classes a week of either yoga philosophy, meditation classes, yoga therapy modules, things like that. So that's ongoing, like all the time. And I think, and so like, as you're saying, oh, you've helped me with boundaries. I'm like, oh God, I've got to do this better for myself. I need to create some more structure around admin, because I feel like that's the piece of the day that's just like, okay, I'll do it now. So I'm going to work on getting that a little tighter. So it's like kind of like an ongoing slog of emails and accounting and stuff like that. So that's my intention, to sort of make time blocks for that. But other than that, so I'd say I get there at 7. Usually my last private is over at like 3:30. And I live 3 minutes away, so I come home for a pretty long lunch. So I'm usually having lunch for about 2 hours, and that sometimes includes a dog walk. And then after that, if I don't have class, which I do a lot, usually on Mondays and Thursdays, sometimes not Mondays, but every Thursday I have class in the evenings that I take, philosophy class with my teacher, Chase Bossart. If I'm not doing that, then I just hang out with my wonderful, beautiful husband and my dog.
I love that. And I'm curious to know, what does success mean to you as a full-time yoga teacher?
As I'm saying these things that are challenging for me, I honestly don't feel like I do anything that I don't want to do, which is huge. I mean, again, the admin, the taxes, that's kind of I don't want to do sometimes, but really being able to wake up and do what I want and have it feel helpful and to feel useful and helpful every day. I do. I feel useful and helpful every single day. And that feels pretty successful. Mm-hmm. I'm working on changing the mindset a little bit about money, because I think it'd be fun to have a little bit more, but I'm pretty happy.
I love that. Well, when I see you as a somebody who's been teaching, like you said, almost 20 years and having your own space and having amazing community that huge, like they have a huge respect for you. Yeah. In my mind, you seem like a successful yoga teacher. Like you have been doing it for so long. You have amazing community and, you're not, and financially, you're not like, I'm not going to make it next month. You can have a little bit of at least spaciousness that you don't have to be grasping for more. It seems like, and yeah, I think, like you said, having teacher that I can look up to or mentor teacher that I can look up to is very significant for me. For me, I've been teaching maybe about 8 years full time, but it's so important for me to be able to see the road and see other teachers who's been walking this path longer than me.
Yeah, that's that way power. You can see it's possible. It is. If you can see it's possible, it becomes possible. Yeah. And so thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. And maybe last question that I have is, what do you have a goal for future or any things you envision for yourself in terms of your teaching or your teaching career?
Well, it's a dream. No, it would be nice to actually shift to a little bit of a later schedule and to expand on the yoga of food and body respect a little bit more. I actually think, too, I'm entertaining. It occurred to me the other day that maybe I should be teaching Yoga Sutras in other people's teacher trainings. So I think that would be really fun. I have a really concise way of delivering Yoga Sutras in about 4 hours. That's super fun and pretty practical. And it's like literally started cooking in my brain a couple of weeks ago. So I haven't done anything about it. So big that. Oh, and I think I might do like a Yoga Sutras deck, like a card deck, like a tarot deck, but for sutras, for a creative project. I think that would be super fun.
That sounds amazing. That sounds a really exciting project. But also another thing, teaching sutra at different teacher training program, I think that would be amazing. I think any yoga teacher training that can have you come in and teach sutras for 4 hours or maybe a weekend, 2 days, whatever it is, I think students are going to benefit so much, because I've been to your sutra studies quite a bit and I learn so much every time, and you are really great at breaking it down and teaching it. And another thing that I see in you that is so fascinating and so powerful is that you're able to relate it to everyday life. So it doesn't become this like fluffy thing up in the cloud, but you can really make it more practical. And another part that I think it's amazing you, Aimee, as a teacher, is that you don't put yourself up on a pedestal. So you share your own experience of like making a mistake or your mind going to this certain a spiral, and you share your own personal experience, and that makes it a lot easier for people to actually grasp and understand the sutra in a very practical day-to-day way. I love your sutra class, and I think
thank you.
I hope that happens.
Now I said it out loud, right? Now I said it out loud. It's got to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. And then with sutra, teaching sutra, a lot of teacher training, even from different part of world, country, they can easily zoom you in to teach sutra. So I feel like the possibility is there for sure.
That would be so much fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Aimee, for this time that you shared with me to share all of your journey and about your teaching and all the lessons you have learned. Please share with the listener how they can find you, what kind of offering you have going on, your website, anything you want to share.
Okay. Super easy. The easiest way is it's AYLB.community. So Community Yoga Club, which is the home of Ashtanga Yoga Long Beach, and the website is AYLB.community. That's the easiest way to find me. And everything is on there. You can email me from that page. There's many hyperlinks. You can sign up for a class. If you want to learn Mysore style Ashtanga, if you want to have somebody help you have a personal practice There's a bit of a protocol to it. So you just email me and I can explain that. It is a bit of, it's a 1 month commitment to practicing pretty regularly just to get a good start. Drop-in doesn't work so much with Mysore style teaching. So, learning to develop personal practice. Dropping in is great for for group classes, but for developing your own personal practice, it's really something that you have to spend time with a teacher cultivating over time. So that's, just email me for that. Anybody's welcome to drop in for Yoga Sutras on Sundays at 9:30. That is in person and on Zoom. So you can be anywhere in the world and drop in. It's 9:30 Pacific time. And I think that's it right now. I'm on Instagram, same thing, ayolb.community.
Yes. And also you offer one-on-one and yoga therapy work.
Yeah,
individual.
Yeah. So I do individual yoga training and therapy. So if if you can't come to the Mysore style in the morning, we can work one-on-one outside of it, and then you can do your own personal practice on your own time. And I do that for people that are in healthy bodies. So that would be a yoga training. And for people that have something that needs recovery, so that would be yoga therapy. And then in mentorship roles, like I have with you.
Yes. And I can attest that I have done one-on-one with Aimee, and I think it's so fascinating that you can see what I need. And give me a pranayama that would be helpful in my practice, asana practice that would be helpful, as well as meditation practice and chanting practice that is specifically for me, for what I'm going through in this moment. So it's not generic. You really focus on what I need. So I think if anybody listening are wanting that one-on-one yoga therapy or one-on-one mentorship kind of relationship and practice that is like really designed for you, I think it's amazing opportunity.
Thank you. That is actually, I really love that too. I have to say, those moments one-on-one, you said, what do you love to do? And I'm like, gosh, how do I pick it? It's like your babies, right? I love each of them. They're all different.
And I will link all of that, your website and social media and all of that on our show notes. Thank you so much, Aimee, for your time. And
you're welcome.
We appreciate all of you and all the wisdom you shared with us today.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Aimee. Aimee is somebody I have a huge respect for, and someone that I consider as my teacher and my mentor. So it was such an honor and privilege that I got to interview her for this podcast. I hope you also enjoyed the conversation and got to learn a little bit more about Ashtanga lineage and how they authorize people to become a teacher. It's a very different process than a 200-hour yoga teacher training that we see today. Like you heard, Aimee went to India many times for a month at a time, and she was finally able to get authorized to teach Ashtanga after, I think she said, the 3rd year of going, and she still goes to this day every few years to study with her teacher. And I just love how much respect she have for the lineage and how she really wants to continue learning. She is a true student of yoga, which makes her such an amazing teacher of yoga, because she is always learning. And another part that I want to highlight is how she emphasized the importance of having a teacher who can bring outside perspective, who can see your practice from outside view or a third person view. Sometimes the view or perception of the practice you have for yourself may not be clear or true, because it can be kind of skewed sometimes. So having that outside perspective of a teacher who can give you guidance or vision or a direction can be so important. And I definitely felt that when I was practicing my soul style with Aimee, but I still feel that with my ongoing philosophy classes and learning that I received from Aimee, as well as one-on-one sessions that I was able to have with Aimee. So much respect for Aimee, and that's somebody I really, really look up to. So thank you, Aimee, for coming on. And talking about the importance of a mentor and teacher, I want to talk a little bit about my mentorship that's coming up. Module 2 is starting in May, and it's going to go on until end of August. And this module of my mentorship program is going to be fully virtual, so anyone from any time zone are welcome to join. The thing I love the most about my mentorship program is the community. It's the community that we were able to cultivate. It's a community of like-minded yoga teachers who actually really care about yoga, care about passing on the teachings and the knowledge of yoga in a meaningful and respectful way. And the community are so supportive. So when you have questions, if you have a struggle that you're going through, or if you want to just celebrate some of your wins, community is there to encourage you, celebrate you, congratulate you, to help you, push you up, help you up if you fall down. So I just love this community so much. What's included in the mentorship program is that you'll get a Zoom philosophy discussions led by me. There will be Zoom Q&A sessions led by me, but I just love how everybody in the community contributes to the Q&A. There is also teachers asana class on Zoom. There will be practice teaching sessions with feedback from me as well as your fellow teachers in the group. And sometimes I get questions about whether this mentorship group program is for you if you're still in a 200-hour teacher training at this moment. And I say yes, you are welcome to join even if you still have not finished your 200 yet. I had people who are not complete with their 200-hour in my mentorship group before, and as long as you are wanting to learn and wanting to be part of this community and you are committed to yoga, committed to learning and deepening your yoga knowledge, then you are welcome. Another question I get is that can you still join the program if you're not currently teaching? And that is also, yes, you are welcome to join even if you're not teaching at the moment. Maybe you are thinking about going back to teaching, or you're thinking about starting your teaching career. You are welcome. That is why this group and I am here for, so we can support you in getting back to teaching if that is your goal and desire. Or maybe you just want to be around other teachers in this kind of learning environment. You are also welcome. But it is geared towards teachers, so if you are a practitioner of yoga and you are interested in this program, message me and we can talk. But I do want to say this program is geared towards teachers, so a lot of the continuing education topic will cover topic that is going to benefit teachers, yoga teachers. I think that's some of the questions I have received so far. The application is up on my website. I'll leave the link on the description so you can fill out the application if you're interested. The deadline for the application is end of April. So I hope to get to know you a little bit more on that application if you do decide to apply. And if you want any more questions, you can find all the info on my website, www.reikayoga.com, or you can always message me through the website or on my Instagram. My Instagram is @reikayoga. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will chat to you next week. Bye.